Hello and welcome to the 2024 edition of Family Life Podcast. I am Fred.
And I am Amma.
Today we want to talk about the concept of Jenga. I'm sure all of you, or most of you are familiar with this game called Jenga, but we want to apply it to family life and we want to strike some parallels between why this is important or why the concept of Jenga is important when it comes to family life. I want to give Amma the chance to give us a little bit of background because all credit to her for coming up with this concept of Jenga and how this applies to family life. So, sweetheart, take it away. What does this mean and how did you even come up with this whole concept of Jenga and how it's important to family life?
Okay, so originally I was thinking of our family, the units. It's four of us in this family and how this family is so busy and involved in so many things. Like each one of us is into something. And so I started thinking one morning about how all the different things we do as family members affect each other. And in that thought process, I started thinking of the game Jenga, which you see in front of us. And the fact that in this game of Jenga, if you move one piece the wrong way, the entire system or the entire structure falls apart.
Yeah.
And so that was where the whole idea of Jenga, the concept of Jenga came up. And I shared it with the family and Fred thought it would be great to do a video about it.
Great idea. Always looking for teachable moments, right? But
Yeah.
the name Jenga is actually a Swahili. It comes from a Swahili root called kujenga, which means to build, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, kujenga means to build. So the whole concept, and I like the background that he gave him about how this is important to family life. She talked about how we're all very busy. We all have very independent lives, right? She has quite a number of things that she does. There are quite a number of things that we do, and how even though we're both independent, or all four of us really as members of the family are independent, somehow we are all connected, right? And it's important for us to be able to realize that even though we are part, even though we're different, somehow our lives are connected. And why is it? Why should we pay attention to the interconnectedness, right, of our lives as it applies to this game of Jenga, you think?
I think it's important that we pay attention to how interconnected we are, because whether we like it or not, when one unit, we should think of family as a body, right? Like a human body. If your head aches, your entire body aches. If your fingers hurt, like I have a cut on one finger right now and I feel it, I know it's there, it's uncomfortable, right? And so if we think of our families as a unit of society, right? We are the basic unit of society. If we do well, society does well. If one member of our family is doing well, then that should translate to all of us, because whether we like it or not, because we live under the same roof, because we have shared experiences and shared values, we are connected. And so there is it's important that we all stay in that union, I guess is the word I'm looking for, and in forging forward and being a better unit as a family.
Yeah, and I think one very relatable example of of how this is applicable, or at least in our family, was it was last weekend where our son Freddie went for a sleepover with one of his friends, and he came back and we had to go from one event to the other, and he had this stomach pain that was very painful, and it just sort of, even though he was the one who was dealing with it, it sort of disrupted, right, our whole schedule to the point where we weren't even sure whether we were able to whether we're able to go to this event, right? And I think that is a classic example of how when one person is hurting, even though it's that particular person, it impacts all of us. And you actually brought attention to the fact that if I'm stressed, right, or if I'm unhappy, or if something is bugging me, even though I'm the one dealing with it, it tends to seep into all or various areas of the family, right? So what's your response to that? Or how can we sort of manage that flow to where we're not we don't become too selfish or too self-centered on what's happening, but also think about the impact of what we're going through has on other family members, other people around us.
So I give an example when I first shared this idea of Jenga Concept with a family last week. I had a busy week coming up. It was a week where I had a couple of events back to back, and I was going to be gone at least 2 or 3 nights last week. And so knowing that my absence was going to affect my family in terms of dinner, and I knew that we're going to probably be eating out a lot just because I had said yes to other things outside of the home. And so I spent all day on Sunday just cooking into the week because I knew that was coming. Do I always get it right? I don't. But the idea of knowing that my absence is going to cost you and the kids dinner drove me to want to prepare for that, right?
Not that it's your sole responsibility.
It's not,
it's not,
dinner, right? But I also know that the impact of mom gone, a couple of nights or 3 nights last week was going to impact us in a way, so it required that I step up and I do my part as a family. Now, if we look at this and you're thinking, okay, why is it important? Why do we even have to care? There is research that has shown over and over again that kids who grow up in a stable home, in a home where there is some form of predictability, tend to do better in life, right? It doesn't have to be the perfect home, but it's the home where you can predict what happens, right? And children will thrive under such circumstances. So yes, it is important that we make sure that every decision we make, we're taking into consideration the unit, right? And so like you went back to school recently, right? And the idea of you going back to school meant that we all needed to adjust because now you're in school. And so that also meant that some evenings you are not going to be present because you have schoolwork, right? And so it's thinking of those things and saying, okay, this is what I want to do. How does that affect the family? And what would this one action affect everyone else, right? It's important. And I also feel like it makes us stronger as a unit. It also allows us to be more us focused versus me focused. And the idea of me is an interesting concept because here in the Western culture, we tend to be more individualistic, right? So it's my happiness and my joy. Whereas Fred and I, where we come from, we're more communal.
It takes a village, right?
It takes a village. And so it's that concept. And I know that sometimes the concept of me versus us is hard to accept in a Western culture. But you also get to realize that your actions affect every single person. And when we are aware of that, it doesn't stop us. So here is the thing where I think that people worry about is that they worry that if I'm thinking of the whole family, then that means that I am not going to do certain things or take certain steps or set certain goals. It is not supposed to limit you. What it is you are thinking in terms of everyone within this group. Right? And so that is why corporations will come up with strategic goals and strategic plans. But then when they do, they involve the different departments within the company, right? So I was part of an organization that just had a strategic plan for, I think it was the next 3 years. And I worked in a school actually that was going through that. And we were all interviewed. There were surveys even for parents and for faculty. And all that input was put together in the strategic plan. So if corporations are doing it, then we need to be doing it too, because we are a unit, we are an institution as a family. And so that means that even as we come up with strategic plans and as we come up with where we want to go, everyone's input matters.
I totally agree with you. And I think going back to a point you made earlier about family, when we think of family in a traditional sense, we're thinking, parents, mom, dad, kids, right? But We do know that there are families that have, either single moms or single dads, right?
Absolutely.
And we're not minimizing that. That
Absolutely,
happens.
absolutely.
And, that can still work, right? If it's, whether it's a single mom home or a single dad home or whatever your family structure looks like, it can still work. Going back on what you touched on about organizations, you touched on the point I was going to make earlier. The corporate world has become such a cutthroat, individualistic, it's about self-reviews, performance reviews, where you're looked at the end of the year based on what you've done.
Right.
And I think the danger that is that it sort of it makes people become so inward focused. You hear things about teams, individuals working in silos. They don't want to work as part of teams because they want to own their own performance, right? I want to be judged for my own performance. I don't want to be, even though I work in a team, it's me, my, right? It's just me, my, and it kind of loses that team centeredness, right? When it comes to this whole concept. Now, I wonder how we can still operate, even though we're looked at as individuals, right? Based on what we do, how can we still work together as a team, whether in a corporate sense or whether in a family? I'm talking about my goals. I want to go back to school. I want to pursue my degree, but at the end of the day, I want to think about the impact that it has on my family, my kids, my availability, during family events, my presence, right? Even in family events, when I'm tired or I have, been in class all day and, the last thing I want to do is to go out for an event, but I have to realize that it's not about me, right? It's about the family, right? So it's that self, what do you call it? Taking away that selfishness, if you will, even though it's not quite selfish. It's a self-centeredness, right? And thinking about the impact that one piece has on the entire unit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that a friend of mine whose husband, I was actually having a conversation with her a while back, and we're talking about her husband when he was back in school for a PhD program, and she shared something that was impactful. What she shared was that what her husband did was he came up with a schedule. He said, look, I'm going to go back to school. I know it's going to affect the family. I know I'm not going to be as present as I want to be. But from this time to this time each day, I'm going to be studying, right? And so when I am studying, everyone knows dad is studying. And so they don't interrupt.
Yeah.
But then they also know that the rest of this time is for the family.
Yeah.
And so he is not going to check his school email or work or anything because he knows this is the set time for school and this is the set time for home. And the family agreed. Yeah. And so she was sharing with me that whenever her husband was sit behind his computer to do work, the kids knew not to go. That was dad's time to study. When he was away from the computer, that was a signal that he was done. And now the family could come together. So it's communication.
It really is.
It's communication. It's also setting boundaries to say yes to this at this time and no to this at that time, right? And setting those boundaries also for others to follow and to know that, okay, if I'm on my computer now, I'm studying, please stay away. But when the computer is closed, I'm not. So you're free to come. And
I also think it takes a lot of sacrifice
it
also,
does,
right?
For sure.
It's you're and support, right? Being there, understanding that one person may not be there for whatever reason, and that may place quite a bit of pressure, right, on the other people to to pull their weight or maybe to carry quite a bit more of that load. And there has to be that willingness to do that and seeing it as, oh no, this is just not, you dumping on me, but this is really just everyone just pitching in to help ensure that we all get to where we need to get to. Let's bring this back to goal setting, right? Where the year is still early yet, and hopefully not all of your goals are falling off, but we tend to approach every year with that desire to set goals or resolutions or whatever, and even with those goals, most often I would dare say that we're looking at goals, individual goals, right? This is what I want to accomplish. I want to lose X amount of pounds. I want to be more healthy. I want to change careers. I want to start a business. It's more what we do as a family is we tend to, yes, we have our individual goals, but we also look at our family goals. How important is that in terms of looking at goals holistically and not individually as we tend to do in cases like that.
I would answer that with a question, with an example. So last year, Fred, who loves his rice, if you ever need to get him rice, but give him a gift, get him rice.
Yasmin rice, to be exact, not just any kind of rice. Let's be specific. Yasmin rice.
So Fred is a rice guy, and so last year his goal was to go on a rice fast for a month.
31 days.
31 days.
Oh man, it was brutal.
It was, but it was stressful for me because now I needed to come up with other ways of eating other things apart from rice because he has me spoiled. I can cook rice like 3
because it's easy, right? It's convenient. You put that thing in the rice cooker after a busy day. Within 15 minutes, it's done.
And there's some kind of sauce or stir fry or something.
It's convenient.
I learned to cook rice in 1,001 ways anyway. Yeah. But anyway. And so now he's taking away rice, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what do I have to feed this man and these children for the next 31 days, right? So it was a decision that he made because he wanted to give up something he absolutely loved.
Not thinking about the
impact, right?
On the family, right? I mean, I was doing with all the good intentions, right? For me, I want to, but I didn't really think about the impact that it was going to create with us coming up with creative ways and adjusting our menus and all of that, right?
Yeah. So to answer your question, it's when we are setting goals, I think communication, right? And it's having those family meetings and deciding, hey, this is what I want to do, and this is what it means to the family. Would you please help me in accomplishing these goals, right? It's getting that family input and setting those goals that makes it happen. But there's also an element that a lot of us tend to overlook is appreciation.
Yeah.
Right? We can't say thank you enough to our family for the sacrifices they make for us. And I think that sometimes we get caught in the goals and accomplishing the goals and we forget that it's all of us in it together. And so that element of appreciation and saying, okay, this is the goal, please help me, but I'm also grateful that you allow me to step out there and do what I need to do. And I think that that's what sometimes we are all missing, and then it leaves family members feeling underappreciated for all the sacrifices that they have had to make. Right. And so for us, like for me, example, I constantly want to make sure that you understand that I appreciate the sacrifices you make, so I can step out there and do the things that I believe that I've been called to do. So yes, it's if there are any tips to leave regarding this, it would be one that there's a conversation around the goal. That yes, set the goal, do not shy away from that, but also involve the family. Let them know this is the goals, and let them know how they can help you, because it gives us all a sense of ownership, right? Once we know how we can all come together to help you, and then don't forget to thank family, because they are the ones that make it happen every day.
I love that. And going back to that rice example, when I decided to do it this year, we talked about it, and rather than just starting again and doing the whole January thing, we talked about it, and what Amma decided or came up with, which I thought was a much better idea, was rather than give up. Of course, this was for health reasons, right? We're watching cups and all of that, but because what typically happens is I'll go 31 days and I'll come back and start eating it, and then that just defeats the whole purpose. But you thought it would be good to, rather than eliminate it completely, maybe cut down on it. The number of times we eat rice, and maybe once a weekend or something throughout the year, which is more sustainable. Rather than just doing the whole 31-day elimination with a thought, which is what we're doing, right? Which I think is a much better idea. So yes, communication is definitely key. One other difficult or challenging part about this whole connection thing is for someone who's been used to doing things their own way. Say someone who you're single person and you're used to making your own decisions, and all of a sudden you start dating or you bring someone into your life, and then now you have to start adjusting, because things that you get up and go make a decision, now you have to take into consideration the other person, right? And that tends to bring a lot of conflict, especially in relationships, right? And so I feel like there's some intentionality, right, that goes into thinking about, it's not just me anymore. Now it's someone else, right? Or maybe now it's with kids, or maybe whatever it is. So I think the ability to flip that or make
Yeah.
that switch
Yeah.
is important, because sometimes we do it unintentionally, but then it also has unintended consequences. We've
Right.
seen relationships suffer as a result of people just making decisions and not
Right.
involving the other people. What are some tips? I mean, how do individuals or people who are just used to making decisions, maybe used to living by themselves, and all of a sudden there's someone in the picture, maybe there's a husband, there's a spouse, there's a boyfriend, girlfriend, or in-law or kids or whatever. Now you're not an individual anymore, right? Now you're, how do you make the effort to think about, involving all the other people or considering the other people in your decision making, so you're not just doing things.
Yeah, that's a good
own.
question. That's a good question. I wish I had the right answer for it. I don't, but I'm going to take a stab at it. I think that the best way to approach that is, once you have set the goal for yourself, you have to ask for help, right? So people are more inclined to be supportive of a vision or a goal if they feel like they're part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so having a discussion and asking for help.
Yeah.
And saying, this is where could you be my accountability partner? I'm going to lose 10 pounds. So I'm going to work out every day this week. Would you, help me in accomplishing this by making sure that I actually do it, or remind me, send me a text message, encourage me, right? And so getting that person's help makes them feel like they're part of this goal, and not feel like, oh, it's your thing and you're just telling me, right? And so I think posing a question to the person in your life or to your family and saying, this is what I want to do, would you all help me, right? I think that, and I went through that. The beginning of the year, I decided I was going to go on a fast, but then cooking would have been a challenge.
Yeah.
And so the way I got their input and their buy-in was to ask Fred and our daughter to take over the kitchen for the few days that I needed to step away. And so they all were part of it. And it was cool to see all of you, asking how I was doing and checking in, and the kids making sure I was drinking water and I was staying hydrated, and you making sure I was fine. But the only reason why the reason why I think you all had the buy-in was because I came to you asking for help.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a strategy that you can employ. Ask people around you to support you and help you in accomplishing that goal. Yeah. And then in return, also ask them, what do you want to accomplish this year? How can I be of service to that? Yeah.
And knowing that asking for help is not a sign of weakness,
it's
right?
Not.
We think that if I ask for help, I'll be seen as a weak person. And it goes back to that individualistic thing, right? So there's that macho thing, it's pride, whatever. But asking for help, there's really nothing wrong with it. I think we all struggle with being vulnerable, and that's one of the things that I have become intentional about. I am not shy of it if I'm struggling in one way. Still working on it, but I think that paradigm has to shift, right? Even in the workplace, when it comes to leaders, there's this perception that if you're a leader, you know it all and you have all the answers, but there's really nothing wrong in asking for help. And I think the reason why this whole thing worked, or one of the critical success factors is the reliance on each other, right? No single block can stand on its own, right? There are layers, everyone has a part to it, right? And if you keep chipping it away and removing pieces, eventually this whole thing is gonna crumble, right? But we need to realize that in unity is strength. So that's why this whole Jenga concept is important. And this really spoke to me so much that I felt like we needed to do a podcast about it. And it's really being impactful in so many levels, family, individual, even in the workplace. As a leader, I realized that it takes teamwork to make the dream work. And so we hope that you've gotten something significant out of this lesson. If you've not played a game of Jenga, it's a fun game to play. Any final words or any final remarks as we bring this to a closing?
Yeah, the only thing I can think about is that we can't do it on our own. I mean, the old saying that no one is an island.
Yeah, that's right.
And we can't do life alone. We can't do 2024 the way we've done 2023, which means that we have to look within the network, our networks, and within our family and friends and people that we can count on. And the only way we can do that is to be authentic and also to ask for help. I think that's what it comes down to. So.
Asking for help.
Yeah.
And one big that's it's communicated, right? It's
Yeah.
communicated. Change that paradigm. It takes two, it takes three, it takes four.
Yeah.
But in unity, I mean, when you rely on each other, that's how we stand, right? When we all come together to form one strong unit, that's the only way we can stand as individuals. So one can put 1,000 to flight, right? But two can make the legions flee is a scripture that we say. So thank you again for tuning into this podcast. We hope to do this more regularly, and sort of slacked a little bit. Now she's toppling the Jenga, not me. But hopefully we'll come your way again with another edition soon. But in the meantime, thank you again for watching, and take care. Go play some Jenga.
Yes.